Today I'm going to talk about low-end control in house, techno, and trance music. So if you're doing dance music and your low end isn't what it needs to be, I'm going to give you some insight on how to basically take the information in your DAW and process it in a way that's going to make sense. Now, this is different than a lot of other trainings out there, right? We're not just going to talk about tools. We're going to talk about thinking patterns, and we're going to talk about what's the rationale behind what we're doing, so you could actually take the knowledge and apply it to your music. If you're anxiously watching for like a quick 30-second solution, this is not going to be it. Sit in tight, take notes, be present with this training, and it's going to change the way you look at your low end and how to process it properly. I'm just going to play this section of the track right now. This track is not mixed, it's just layered, and I'm going to do some work to show you exactly how to control the low end right now. So let's go. So as you see, it's a melodic type of techno track. It's a bit more on the brighter, more uplifting side of things. The body of everything that needs to be there is there in the track. Now, how do we make this sound proper? I'm not going to mix the entire thing. I'm going to give the low end proper control. First things first, what we want to do is turn off the kick and the bass. Why am I doing this? Because both the kick and the bass contain sub information. And when you're trying to control your low end, you want to control your sub information. So if we remove the two elements that actually need to be there, kick and bass, we're left with the rest of the instruments. And in reality, with the remaining of these instruments, we should not really have sub frequencies. That's like step number one, right? If there is any sub frequencies here, we want to make sure to like assess it properly. Remember, your low end is your low end. What that means is like, we as humans don't hear low end detail very well. It's because how our ears and our brains work. Because we don't hear a lot of detail, you got to keep it simple. You got to keep it a bass and kick relationship only. So anything that's down here needs to get out of the way. If I actually put an EQ, check out the EQ, the spectrum here on the master without the kick and the bass, you're going to see this part of the track is going to be somewhat kind of sparse and empty. So this is step one. If you do this and you have elements in the low end, like clean them up. Maybe you got to change octaves in your pads. Maybe you got some very low end toms that's occasionally it's coming in. It's fine. We could multi-band sidechain. We'll talk about that. Or if you have plucks that are very low in frequency, clean those lower frequency out. Don't overdo it. Don't make it super intense so you don't thin out your sound. But overall, your sub frequency need to contain two instruments, the kick and the bass. So the sub of the kick and the sub of the bass. First step is to check this. Number two, you want to now turn off the rest of the groups. Let me just close this off. And now we're isolating the low end. These are the two instruments that exist in your low end, in the low end. Kick and bass. I'm using a lot of PML samples just to give this explanation. I mean, they have a lot of good samples. We can't deny that. So we have the kick and the bass. If we're going to control the low end, assuming we've done step one, well, we've made sure any top instrument doesn't have low end information that's prominent. Step two is now we isolate the top end. Let's just look at the low end for now. Want to properly sidechain. This is not going to be a sidechain video, so I'm going to go a bit faster here because I have other sidechaining videos. If you want to check out, go through my library, you'll find it. But I need to second make room for the sub of the bass, the sub of the kick. When the kick comes in, the sub moves out of the way for the kick to breathe. So we want to make room because the low end it's not a frequency range where we could properly hear in a lot of detail. It's more that we feel. We want to keep those frequencies simple. And simple means one thing at a time, not too many things layered at the same time. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to grab a compressor. Again, this part of the training, I'm going to go a bit faster simply because I have trainings about sidechaining. Let's select the kick. I'm just going to sidechain here. how do we actually hear if our sidechain is good? There's two things to look at. Again, this is not a sidechaining video, but I want to talk about this because it's going to be important. First, you want to make sure once your bass is properly sidechained, basically, how do we know if it's done properly? There's two things. Number one, the kick still is very clear. If you feel like the kick loses any impact or any frequency range in general, there's a sidechaining issue, especially if the low end is not isolated, separate, and clear cut to punch. I'm talking about dance music here. That's the first thing you're gonna have to look at. When I do whatever I gotta do in my bass, is the kick cutting through cleanly? It has to almost feel like the kick is uninterrupted. If that's the case, that's step one. Step two of sidechaining is you want to make sure that the pump that's coming back in isn't lagging. Because if it lags, it messes up your groove. You want to make sure it properly wraps around the kick. So I want a pretty intense pump. I'm only kind of taking the click of the kick. I'm not taking into account the sub of the kick right here. And we're going to apply multiband now because this doesn't fully take into account the removing of the low end properly because we're not taking into account the low end of the kick here coming in. Again, for more detailed step-by-step, watch my other trainings when it comes to sidechaining. Let me just quickly do this because the second point is this. The sidechaining aspect needs to be done, right? So the first thing is we check that the low end is not occupied by other instruments. Second step is properly sidechaining. See the clarity? Let me group these together. Okay, so let me play without it and then with it, then see how much like there's space made for the kick. So what's happening? The kick is much more powerful now just by itself. Just by doing this strategy, because what's happening is like the low end of the bass is moving out of the way of the kick, so the kick is breathing properly. Okay, so this is the second thing that we do. First thing was to make sure there's nothing in the sub range aside from kick and bass. Second, we properly sidechain. And now, which is like the third thing we look at to make your low end really controlled in house and techno. And it's this simple, guys. I've mixed and mastered thousands of tracks. I had a mixing and mastering studio, so I've done this forever. There's something that the third piece is the most important piece. And the third piece is not a mixing thing. It's an arrangement decision. It's a compositional decision. It's a production decision. Yes, one of the most important things in your low-end control is production fundamental. It's not a mixing thing. You've seen me do a lot of like trainings about, most probably if you haven't, well, I always talk about your issue is not in the mix. I don't care how advanced you are. Your issue is not in your mix. It's always in the production fundamentals. Whether you've been producing for 2 years, 5, 10, 15, 25, I don't care. If you're having issues making your low end sound amazing or your tracks sound professional, the issue is never in the mix. It's always in how you are designing the production. And this third point to look at now is fully aligned with what we're doing. Right now we have 3 basses. Let's put in the kick. Hold on. We got the sub, which is a sustained bass, and then we got the top end. Bum 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 bum. It's just going in with the beat, and then we got this layer. It is kind of cool because it's a wider sound. It gives some movement. If the track was just kick and bass, right, this would be fine. But when we start adding layers, let me start adding the drum layers. And then we start adding, the pads matter a bit less in this situation. In this situation, sorry. I've lost my voice because my son started going to daycare and bringing all the diseases you could imagine back. So when we start adding like the plucks, the thing about the plucks, there's two different rhythms here. This rhythm itself goes along with this bass. Compositionally, rhythmically, it goes along, which is great. But this one right here is an added rhythm. It still goes with the ba 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 all together, but it's varying to a lot. So it feels like, and also the modulation of the melody and the sound design, it feels like it's a different rhythm. It's accenting in different parts. So right away, just with these three instruments, and you're going to see where I'm getting at with this third point. Just with these three instruments, there's so much movement, there's so much story, there's so much the song is trying to tell us, right? You see how I'm not talking about mixing? And it is the most important piece of the puzzle. And no one talks about it. It's fascinating. There's a lot going on already. Now, if we add the drums on top of it, also have the rhythm of the lead. Why am I telling you all this? We're supposed to talk about low end control. Here's where it ties all back together. This layer right here, it's adding too much complexity to a rhythm. By itself, just bass and kick would be fine. But when we start adding different layers on top, especially with the drums and the movement of the plug and the lead, this added bass layer becomes an issue. I'm gonna play with it and I'm gonna play without it, so you hear the difference in how the mix cleans up and how the low end starts becoming much more clean cut. See what a simple thing of just removing this layer, the low end. Now we actually hear the kick better, right? Let me do a quick leveling as well, just to make sure that we're hearing everything optimally. Again, I'm not going to do anything that's mixing related. Let's start with this. Good. And mind you, like the pads, the plucks, there's no sidechain, there's nothing. There's no mixing happening. If we bring in that third layer again, the best lever you could actually pull, because of every other rhythm going on, is actually removing this layer. It's easier to listen to, it feels better, it's more calming to listen to, right? And what am I saying here? Simplify your composition, simplify the sound layer you're layering. When you simplify these things, there's room for things to breathe. So there's three things that we did to control your low end, and this is what you have to do for all your tracks, whether you're producing techno, house, trance, or any variation in any subgenre of these genres of dance music, where the kick is king. This is what you got to do to control your low end. Number one, make sure there's nothing happening in the low end aside from kick and bass. Number two, properly sidechain your kick to your bass properly. Number three, look at the instrument, and this is one of the most important parts. Go through your layers and ask yourself, do I have too much going on in the bass? Let me simplify the bass. Maybe by itself it sounds good, but when I start adding layers, there starts having layering and compositional clashes, which is getting in the way of how we perceive the low end. Cleanness in the low end is not just a frequency thing. It's how humans perceive what's happening in the low end. If the perception is kept clean and simple and mature, it's going to sound amazing. Guys, hope this has helped out. A lot of what separates us from a lot of educators out there, educators teach tactical information. We focus on fundamental thinking. And when you fix your thinking in the DAW and you're asking yourself the right questions, you start focusing on the right thing versus just learning tactical knowledge. So if you want to jump in and have a conversation with us and see how we could help, see how we could build something specific for you, for your journey. This is for really committed and serious producers. Hop on a call. There's a link below. You could book in a call and we could chat and see if what your issues are, give you some clarity on where you are, what you have to be focusing on, and then kind of build a custom plan for you from there if there's a fit and if it makes sense. Love you all. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments below. See you.